Cool.fm is the perfect station for music lovers who enjoy a mix of adult pop, modern country, and classic hits. Our unique blend of different genres creates an awesome listening experience that you won't find anywhere else. With Cool.fm, you don't have to constantly change stations to hear the music you love. Just download the Live 365 app and start listening to our curated selection of modern adult and country hits, as well as the classics you know and love. So tune in to Cool.fm and start enjoying the best of all your favorite music in one place.
Hi, I'm Brendan Albetski. I'm the artist and writer behind Maru Kiru, Destroy the Moon. I'm also the artist on The World Ends in Fire. You can find me on social media at Hell to Breakfast. You can also find everything I do at my website, brendanalbetsky.com. Find all my socials there. You can find links to my book where you can purchase it. You can also find a link to my global comics page where you can read Maru Kiru in its entirety for free online. And you're listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. Of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by a returning guest. He has not been on the show in what feels like forever, but more than likely it's been a couple of years. The creator of course, one of the most epic comic titles you will ever hear, Maru Kiru, Destroy the Moon, and I didn't pluralize it this time, joined by the ever-talented Brendan Albetski. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Kurt. Thanks for having me back. It has not been years. Okay. It's only been, I would say, a year at the most. Time does blend. It really does. It feels like it's been forever because honestly, every month just feels like it happens like that, but it also is really slow. So,
well, for those that don't know anything about yourself and who didn't watch the last interview, shame on them. Tell us who you are and what you're bringing to Two Geeks Talking this time around.
Sure. So my name's Brendan, and I am the writer and artist of Maru Kiru, Destroy the Moon. I've been working on comics off and on, and more seriously on in probably the last 5 years, but maybe like 10, 12 years all told. The last time I was on the show, we were getting ready to release my first published book of my creator-owned work, and I'm going to hold it up and show you right here. So this we were talking about how great it would have been to have it on the show last time, and they weren't ready yet. We were still working on it with the publisher, but we've got it now. You know, it came out really great. If you go to my website, brendanalbetsky.com, you can find a link to get a copy all to your very own. I'm trying to find a really cool splash page that I can show you. I just love the way the book feels, everything that Castaigne Publishing did to pull it together. The colors came out awesome. You know, all the spreads look fantastic. All of the art looks fantastic, if I do say so myself, and I do. But, you know, the whole thing comes together, and everybody who, obviously it's for free online. It's hosted on Global Comics right now. You can read the whole series for free. There's several chapters that haven't been published in print yet. But people tell me, even after the people who are dedicated readers online, there's nothing quite like holding the actual published book in your hands. So I highly recommend it. And I know I'm a little bit biased, but...
Well, you wouldn't be on the show if, one, you didn't have a comic, and two, you didn't have something to promote as well.
That's true.
That's the other
That's
thing.
true.
That's the one thing that I've seen a lot of color work in my time, and a lot of vibrant color work in terms of comics in my time. And you're up there in the top 3 for the most vibrant colored comics that I've read in a long time in terms of not only comics but web comics. So
thank you very much.
Keep going with whatever you're doing, because you're here talking about not only the physical book, but you also have something else in store as well.
Yeah, the physical book collects the first 5 chapters of the comic, and it's also got a bonus story in there, a bonus 6th chapter, if you will. We've gone a lot further than that since the publishing of the book. We actually have 9 chapters currently available on Global Comics for free. Anybody can read them. You don't need a subscription to anything. It's always going to be available for free. I really feel like that's an important thing to make available. So we're actually just released chapter 9. I say that it's the royal we. I do everything on this book. I have recently started working on some team-based comics with some great writers. So maybe I'm thinking a little bit more pluralistically now. But in terms of Maru Kiru, I'm still the only person working on that. And so I've made 9 chapters available now. The 9th one just came out last week. At the time of recording, just came out last week. I think it's my best one yet. It's my longest one yet, to be sure. And it's really kind of tying up the arc that started in this first printed volume and kicking off the next big one, which is very exciting for me as the writer and the artist. Kind of sad to see some of the things that I started get tied up to a close, but also very excited to get on to the next thing. So
this is issue 1 then, and you're going into like a issue 2, or are you doing like volumes? How are you working that out?
I'm a very bad person when it comes to conventional numbers and issue length. I take it by chapter. The chapter is my shortest chapter I've ever done was 6 pages. This longest one that I just finished up was 31. So that's a little bit closer to like a full issue length. It's a little bit longer than a full issue length. Usually they sit somewhere between 12 and 16, and I do 4 of those a year. Each printed volume is going to have at least 5 chapters in. You know, that's kind of be the bare minimum. I want to hit at least 100 pages before I publish something. So we'll do at least 5 chapters, and there'll probably be a bonus chapter because there's kind of a bonus side story that's going on. Maybe, you know, extras and all kinds of stuff. Anything we can pack in there, we want to get in there. So when volume 2 comes around, it's going to be even bigger and better than the first one.
That's all. It's good that you're not just limiting it to like traditional 24-page comic books, collecting your issues together, and I think that's wonderful because you're giving value to what you're doing. And if every issue turns out exactly like what you currently have in your hands there, I think it's a steal. Whatever you're selling it at, it's a steal. It looks too incredible not to pass up, truly.
I appreciate that. It's kind of funny, and I'm glad that you are kind of like being positive on that, because it's like it does feel a little bit weird in the way that I do this sometimes, because I know I work with a lot of people that do like a very conventional issue format, and so when you try to have this conversation and they say like, well, how many issues have you done? So that's tough to say. You know, when I started this, I was kind of doing like a webtoon format. I never did like a vertical scroll because I always kind of in the back of my head wanted it to be printed, so I did it in page format from the jump. You know, originally it was just going to be done online as like a webcomic. I was posting on Webtoon for a while. I don't anymore. Webtoon's done one too many naughty things for my taste. I'm done with them. You know, I work with Global Comics now. They've been really great on everything that they do with the hosting, and you know, they have a lot of big publisher deals now, and I'm still just a little guy. I don't feel like I get completely lost in the shuffle. You know, I had my new chapter come out, and I actually did hit on the you know, the top trending popular comics the last 7 days on there. So it's like, okay, I still feel pretty good about that I can still kind of get up there. Now that Image Comics is on there and everything, you get worried that you're going to get squashed. But...
Yeah. It's like seeing like Batman and DC and all this in the Eisners, and you know, I get the draw, I get the understanding of it, but it's like independent creators should take a little more precedence than something that's already been established, because you have to work twice as hard to promote yourself just as much, because one, you don't have the marketing team, and 2, you're relying on word of mouth and social media and everything like that to showcase an amazing comic that you've put a lot of time and effort into. So, you know, the fact that you have a platform now like Global Comics is just wonderful to see, because a lot of people that I've had on the show have left Webtoons and gone to Global Comics. So what was the draw to Global Comics?
They do a really good community outreach. I just saw people talking about the site and the good experiences that they've had with it. You know, it's a small team that actually works for Global Comics. I mean, last time I checked, I think they only had 6 employees, but it's probably grown since then. They've done a lot of growing since then. But I just heard, you know, word of mouth, people actually having good experiences working on this site. I decided to give it a shot. And when I put my comic up there, Chris, the CEO, actually reached out to me by DM and was like, "Oh, we're really excited to have you." And he retweeted everything. It was like, "This is great. Look at this. What's on my website now." And I'm like, "Wow, that's pretty cool. I never got that anywhere else." So, you know, they got me. They're gonna have me around for at least a while just for that. Flattery will get you everywhere, you know.
Now that you're looking towards issue 2 here, now that you're wrapping up issue 1, what have you learned from a creative and business perspective about yourself with this first issue, and what are you going to change coming issue 2?
Well, I call them volumes.
Volumes.
I'm just gonna impress that nomenclature just because of the length of the books. You know, the first one was like 100 pages. The second one's probably gonna be a little bit longer. I don't want people to think that they're getting like a 24-page issue. It's a big book, which is why it is the price that it is. Yeah, no, I've definitely have learned a ton, you know, about myself in making this. And I was on another show recently where I was asked a similar question, and I had to think of an answer. And now I've got this answer that I'm thinking to myself. But you know, like every time I make one of these chapters, and every time I set out to make just the best comic I've ever made. And so far I've done it 9 times, at least in my opinion. Which, I say a lot that like you need to be your own biggest fan when you're an indie comic creator. So I think my opinion carries a lot of weight when it comes to this comic. But that really is just what I try to do with each one. Is like I'm gonna make the best comic I've ever made with this chapter. Whether it's doing some weird experimental stuff, like chapter 8 was completely nonverbal. We had no dialogue in that chapter at all. Just trying to do some weird, cool experimental stuff with that. Doing new things with color, doing new things with perspective, doing new things with just how explosive we can make some of the action scenes and the violent moments, getting weird with the lettering. I don't ever want to be bored making this. When I started doing this, because this is a COVID baby, I had the time on my hands to get to work on something big. I was like, well, I've had a lot of non-starts in the past, and the reason I fell off of all of those is because I was trying to trend chase, or I was trying to do something that was for somebody else because I thought like this is what readers are going to want. And I was always wrong too, which is another thing. So with this comic, I was like, I'm going to make something that's going to keep me entertained. I never want to be bored working on this comic. If I ever get to a point where I'm not enjoying making it, then I'm going to scrap and rewrite and try again. Because like I said, I make it available for free. I am doing a lot of work for hire stuff now, where I'm doing a lot of interiors and covers for other writers. So I am making some money off of comics and royalties off the book too, here and there. But like this is by and large like my passion project. My real goal is to grow myself as a creator, and to, if there comes a lot of money off of royalties for this, or people want to give me super fan money on Global Comics, happy to take it. I think it's really important that I came up on free comics on the internet. That's why it's so important to me that I make this available to people for free. But the comics that like really launched me and got me started and got me reading, I read them all for free online. And it wasn't like I was reading scanlations or anything like that. It was just that these creators were either living off ad revenue or just making stuff for free because they wanted to make it. And so like knowing that that's what got me started, I almost hope that I can do that for somebody else at some point. And that's why I want to keep it free. But that being said, it keeps it so that it's like, if I never feel bad about throwing something out if I don't enjoy making it, because this is entirely for me. And so I'm just going to I'm doing just the good parts, only the stuff that I want to do.
Well, and that's the one thing. Like, if you weren't part of the DC Marvel growing up in the 80s and 90s or whatever your age bracket is here, for me, it was all indie webcomics. That's literally how I grew up reading comics as well too. So to see where some of these creators are going and to see who they've inspired, who have actually been on the show and interviewed, pretty amazing in that regard as well too. So who are some of your influences that made you want to be a comic creator?
It's funny. The first one I'm going to mention is came up the other day. I was on Cody's show recently. Yeah. The subject of Jeff Jacques came up. Okay. And he didn't know who Jeff Jacques was. I'm like, you don't know who Jeff Jacques is?
Okay,
and so
I gotta have words with him on that.
You do because he needs to know. But so I told him a little bit about questionable content about Jeff, and it's like that was one of like the OG comics for me when I was started reading. Is like that was because he updated every day back in the day, and so it was just that was a huge thing for me and my friends. It was like we loved the guys that updated all the time because we would just go more and more and more. So that Penny Arcade obviously was like a huge deal back in the day. I mean, I guess it still is. They're still around. PAX is enormous. I don't know.
I've never been, but I heard it's incredible. So.
Yeah, I've never been either, but I've seen the pictures and just like, well, that started as a webcomic, believe it or not. Chris Straub was like my favorite just ever. I understand why he doesn't really make comics anymore, but it's when he stopped doing. I mean, Chainsaw Suit was huge. I love Chainsaw Suit, and I understand he's kind of tired of doing that, and there's not a whole lot left to say. That's fine. But like Brood Hollow was like my favorite comic, and I'm so sad that it's done before its time. And maybe he'll come back to it someday. Maybe he'll see this interview, and
Well, I have interviewed him before, so it's not like I have.
Oh, really? You have? Wow.
I interviewed 3 of the 4 Half Pixel crew. So
no kidding.
Scott Kurtz, Chris Straub, and Brad Geiger.
Scott Kurtz has one of my favorite quotes about making comics, which is so many people think that making comics, you're going to work hard in your bedroom, and then someday Stan Lee shows up in the TARDIS and said, "Come on, kid, we're going to the big time." I'm paraphrasing, but it's still, I think about that a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of influential creators. I mean, you also have Danielle Crosetto, you have Eric Moen, you have Don Griffin and Byron Wilkins. There are so many more. Like for me, it was Mega Tokyo was one I read every single day as well too. Like, and that's still semi kind of ongoing right now as well. Dominic Deegan as well. I mean,
Did you ever read Rice Boy?
Oh yeah, with Evan
Dom. Yeah. No, I am going to have the opportunity to be on a panel with him in a couple of weeks. We're doing a fantasy roundtable with the Cartoonist Co-op. They reached out to me about it because I'm working with the Cartoonist Co-op on a couple of things. I'm a member. I asked them if they would be interested in doing an ad campaign for Maru Kiru, and they said yes, but we'd like to wait for your second volume because your first one's kind of already out there. But do you want to do this fantasy roundtable? I said, yeah, sure. I said, okay, we've got you and we've got another guy interested, and we're going to try to get down with a couple other people. So we'll email you soon. So they email me, and I find out that the other guy is Evan Dom. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. So I tried to play it like real cool and just be like, well, I just, I'm a longtime fan of Evan's work. It's been very formative for me, and I'm excited to be on the panel. And I hope I can contain myself. But it's cool,
So when I went to Chicago and C2E2 in 2012, I interviewed all of the people in the Webcomic Pavilion, and he was one of those interviews as well. So I've interviewed pretty much everyone in the webcomic sphere. So
I forget sometimes that you've been doing this for like 15 years now. And you have talked to everyone.
Penny Arcade is one I haven't talked to. They're the only ones.
They're fairly private nowadays, aren't they?
Yeah, they're basically like Stan Lee of the webcomic field.
Yeah. It is what it is. Maybe you'll get him someday.
Yeah. Eventually. You're doing all these amazing things. You're now doing fantasy panels. You're branching out. You're doing amazing work in that regard too here. And you're still looking towards the future of the comic itself. So what else do you have on the go that you can actually talk about that you haven't signed NDAs on? Because I'm curious about that as well.
I'm very indie, Kurt. I haven't signed NDAs on anything.
Okay.
Everything that I do only stays secret because I'm a good person. No, but I have a lot of things that I can tell you about. Just kind of rattle off some stuff. A couple of them are actually live on Kickstarter right now. The money's not going in my pocket. I've already been paid, but I'm still happy to help out because the writers I've been working with are really, really great people and great writers, and they just have fantastic voices and stories that you're going to want to hear. The first one is called An Insomniac's Delights. It is an anthology series that I've did a story for with Alice Quinn Rose, and that's on Kickstarter right now for the first issue. They got a very reasonable goal. I think it's less than $1,000 that she needs to get it off the ground. And I know that she's got 7 stories written. And this first issue has 2 stories in it, and I did one of them. And it's a very cool experimental story about a dog from the point of view of a dog. It's dialogue free, which I think is a fun challenge. So we spent a lot of time figuring out like how the dog is going to exist in this world. And it's mostly told through smell. So it's a really cool comic that I think people are going to like. It is a horror story. It is pretty creepy. And it is a little unsettling. So buyer beware in that regard. But if you're into that sort of thing, then I definitely recommend you check it out. The second one is called The World Ends in Fire, which is another fantasy comic that I did interiors and cover for with DC Horn, who also did Once Upon a Time in Xanatopia. Alternate covers for him in the past. So
that's beautiful.
That's a great series as well that you might want to check out. But this is a comic about 4 kind of ragtag heroes on like kind of a road trip of doom through the desert, trying to prevent the end of the world, collect a certain amount of magical artifacts to make that happen, and kind of their misadventures in trying to accomplish that. So it was a lot of fun on the first one. It is on Kickstarter right now. Another one with a really low goal. There is also a coloring book version of that comic, which is interesting because that's how the project started. Was DC reached out to me and said, you've got really clean line work. I think it would be cool if we did a coloring book. My kids like to color, and I gave them one of your pages the other day and they had a great time with it. How'd you like to make a coloring book comic? And I said, sure. And so we did the whole thing in line art. And then we looked at it and he said, what would you think about coloring it? And I said, well, I mean, I'm not going to kick work out of bed. So yeah, of course I'll color it. That's why I did a test page for him. He says, yeah, okay, I think we need to do this. So we just gave it the full treatment. So you can get both versions, the version where I colored it, and then there's the version where you can color it yourself, which is kind of a fun thing to do. I've seen some people on early copies do some pages and have had a different interpretation than I did, to be sure. But and then lastly, I'm actually was working on this today. This is still kind of in the really early stages of penciling and blocking, but I need to get it done pretty soon so I can send it back to the editorial team. But I'm going to be in the Fractured Realms anthology from Limit Break Comics, doing a story called The Doom That Came to Midgard, which is written by Alex Garrick Wright. I'm doing all the art for that. It's a real fun. It's a real fun for me. It's a real awe-inspiring cosmic horror story with Norse theming. Everything in Fractured Realms is based on Vikings and Norse mythology. Limit Break's done a couple other anthologies like this. They're kind of modern reinterpretations of fairy tales, etc. And this one's all kind of focused on Norse mythology. It's a lot of fun things to look forward to there. So those are the things that are set in stone that I'm comfortable talking about on the air, on a video that will be online forever. There's some other fun things in the works as well, but we'll stick to the ones that are 100% real.
That's awesome. I love it. Going back to the coloring book, that's an interesting take on it, because I've seen that on a few different things in the past, not anything really recent. Do you think that it inspires creativity to have someone else work on a coloring book like that, whether they're like a kid or whether they're, in
Oh yeah,
our age?
definitely. Yeah. And first of all, with their our age, absolutely. Adult coloring books, huge deal. Definitely. Just go for it. But it's kind of like fan art in a way. I'm going to choose to look at it like that. But especially in terms of getting inspired though, because if you see somebody take your line work and do cool colors on it, they're going to think about it differently than I would. And it's an opportunity for me to see how somebody else processes what I've done. When I've gotten fan art from Maru Kiru, same thing, where I get to see other people's interpretation of the characters. I've done a few commissions too, grabbing artists that I'm, really fond of and saying like, hey, I would like you to do my character. I don't want to give you any kind of direction at all. I'm going to show you a picture and I want to see what your interpretation is. And I've gotten some really awesome pieces as a result of that. And it informs the way that I think about the character going forward too. I want it to be genuinely of myself, but a lot of other people have some really good ideas, and maybe they see things from an angle that I might not necessarily have thought of. And so if I can see that in a piece of fan art, it might make it into the comic. I had one recently where I do like an art trade with some friends on a Discord server, and somebody did a Maru Kiru where she's fighting a giant squid. And I said, oh, that's going in the comic. I don't know where, but that's going in the comic.
The color change aspect of Maru Kiru in different issues. Maybe she gets a new wardrobe every volume, I should say, when it comes to...
It could very well be. This one kind of happens to happen along that line. Yeah, I like doing costume redesigns, so it's gonna happen again. I think that's part of the fun, you can, and it helps you kind of visually mark where the characters are in the story, seeing them as well. I like to have that kind of visual progress.
We've always had a wonderful time with each other, just chatting and shooting the shit as we do here, but I hate to say it, Brendan, but that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking, and as always, you're always welcome back on the show, and I want to thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me again. It was a great time. I definitely will be back. It will be less than 5 years, I promise you. And just before I leave, just to remind everybody, you can find everything that I do on my website, brendanalbetski.com. If you can read my name in here, that's the website, just myname.com. It's got all my social accounts on there. Links to purchase the book, volume 1, which is available now. Keep an eye out for volume 2 at the end of this year. And of course, the link to go to Global Comics, where you can follow me and read the entire comic for free online as well. So that's the place to find me.
Well, like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,200 plus others on our website, tgtmedia.com or twogeekstalking.com. That's the word 2, not the number 2. The number 2 gets you somewhere else, and you don't want to go there. You
don't go there.
Yeah, don't bother. It's perfectly fine. My website's going through a revamp, so go to our YouTube channel. A lot more updated. I'm only one person. YouTube.com/TGT Media. The podcast is back after 12 years as well, too, which is twogeekstalking.podbean.com, or search for Two Geeks Talking on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Alexa, and any other favorite audio streaming service you get your podcasts on. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on to Geeks Talking.